So I'll just start recording down here.
I started it, Josh.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren. This is Josh. Want to let people know that we are recording it and we'll be distributing this at a later date. First and foremost, on housekeeping, we have cart captioning, and you can find the link in the chat. If you need that, you can chat our team, question and answer, or in the general chat and find that link, and you can activate it down on the bottom of your screen. There's also phone call-in info if for any reason you need that and are unable to have the platform working for you. We can do that. We will send out slides. You can get them now on the IAAP website. You could download a version of PowerPoint and follow along if for whatever reason the slides on this platform aren't working for you. But we will definitely send out an accessible PDF version at a later date to all of those that attended. So you don't need to worry about that. I hope you stay with us though, as we are excited to have this conversation. Any other housekeeping from Jay or Lauren before we go to the next slide? If not, let's go into introductions. This is Josh, and I'm going to briefly go on camera here so you can see that I'm a real person in my house participating in this virtual webinar. Just want to introduce myself. I am the co-director of the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology, also known as PEAT. This is a project to provide information, free resources for the public regarding accessible workplace technology. We have a focus on emerging technology, but we also have great resources that cover basics from the simplest of accessible Word documents and emails up to complex issues we're looking at like mixed reality, autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, and the like. We will have some resources at the end of the slide that can direct you to PEAT, but I just want to start out by saying it's a pleasure to be here. Been participating, collaborating with IAAP and tracking their development for years. And Jay, my co-presenter, has been a huge support to PEAT over the years, serves as one of our think tank members to help guide our work. And it is a pleasure, Jay, to be on a presentation with you. I will turn it over to you now for introductions.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jay Wyant speaking. Making a quick sound check to make sure you all can hear me now, since I haven't had a chance to talk until this point. So you all can hear me? Good, great. Thank you. So I'm Jay Wyant. I'm honored to be serving as Minnesota's Chief Information Accessibility Officer, housed in Minnesota IT Services for the state of Minnesota. I also had the privilege of serving on IAAP Global Leadership Council. And so it's been a great opportunity for the state of Minnesota to be involved with accessibility at that level as well. Most of our presentation is based on material that dedicated state of Minnesota employee collaborated on to compile, creating a blog post that covers a lot of the same stuff that's available in the resources slide at the end. So that's the end of the introduction, and I'm going to turn off the camera now that you know I'm a real person too, and I'm going to focus on the slides. So next slide. So back in the day, before the present reality, I'd walk into a meeting only to learn that a key member, usually a vendor or someone outside the state, decided to call in, leaving me, a deaf person, suddenly without access. Now, entire meetings are being run this way. How do we ensure full access and inclusion for everyone. Think of it this way. In the virtual meeting environment, everyone runs the risk of experiencing the impact of having a disability. What happens if your audio starts dropping or cutting in and out? Or if your Wi-Fi drops and you can't see the slides or the whiteboard? Or the video becomes pixelated? How about if you're talking and the chat sidebar explodes with related and unrelated conversations, and you can't track what's going on and talk at the same time? Or you want to chime in on the conversation, but you're too slow to hit the mute or mic button, and someone cuts in before you. Hopefully, nothing goes wrong. But because it can and often does, it is best to operate your meeting with the assumption that everyone attending is blind, deaf, or neurodiverse, or with limited mobility. That way, you ensure inclusion for everyone and are prepared for everything. So next slide. You probably have a go-to web conferencing tool that you already use. Have you taken the time to step back to decide if you are using the right tool for the kind of meetings you want to have? Obviously, there's a difference between a phone meeting and one in which you want to discuss a document or give a presentation like we're doing today. What may not be so obvious is that not everyone may be able to have the full web meeting experience. But University Design calls for us to try and include as many people as possible in our materials and processes. For example, not everyone may have broadband, and some folks may not be using their computer at this time. How often have you heard a participant talk as they go under a bridge? So if you want a meeting format where everyone can talk, then you need to offer folks the ability to connect either through their computer and a headset or by the phone. That's why Josh earlier, when doing the housekeeping, was mentioning the phone number. That means offering both a link to the web interface and a phone number. This becomes even more critical if the person needs to connect through the relay service, which is only possible through a phone number. CART, C-A-R-T, stands for Computer Assist Real-Time Translation. It's typically a stenographer providing a live transcript. Whether the service is called captioning or CART depends on whether the caption writer is talking to a video encoder or the web conferencing app versus providing a separate URL. So technically speaking, we're doing both. If you click on to the closed caption button in the bottom of the webinar screen, you're opening caption, and that captioning bit is hooking to that. If you use the URL that we also provided by the same person at the same time, that's CART. The key, instead of worry about which one to offer, the key is to tell the vendor what you need. A good vendor will ensure that you have the right person qualified to support your needs. Not every web conferencing tool supports captioning. For example, currently Teams and Google Hangouts doesn't, so the vendor will give you a separate link, such as from StreamTech or OneTap app. Zoom, WebEx Meetings, and Adobe Connect do support captions. But I'm here to recommend that if possible, you offer the separate URL as well, just like we're doing today. Things can go wrong, and it's always good to have that backup. Plus, there are currently issues with how some of those apps display the caption. So a separate screen with more control over the caption can be very useful. However, this can increase the complexity for the caption vendor, so make sure they're comfortable with that. What about automated caption? More platforms are offering this. If you're using a high quality mic in a quiet room, it can work fairly well. But the moment someone with a bad microphone starts to speak or use jargon, acronyms, people's names, things can go south in a hurry. So for formal presentations and live meetings like this, a live captioner is best. Let's distinguish between accessibility and accommodation. As the state of Minnesota, where I work, when we talk about accessibility, we're referencing Section 508 and Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG 2.0. Those are the set criteria that you can provide measurable, testable elements. Accommodation, on the other hand, refers to the ADA, or Americans with Disability Act. So in America, that is. So if you have a deaf person who requires an accommodation, telling that person to deal with automated captions is a no-no, because that's their decision to make. Better to ask, and perhaps suggest, experiment with small group meetings to see if, for example, automated captions can work in certain times, in certain environments.
Hey, this is Lauren. We have a question from the Q&A. Can I run it by you?
Okay, Lauren, yes, you go ahead.
All right, we have a question from Heather who's just confirming if live captioning and CART are the same thing or if they're different. It can be confusing if we use the terms interchangeably.
This is Jay speaking. They are different. Technically, they're provided usually by the same provider, and most often, most people who can do one can do the other. But if you were to look at, for example, in the U.S., we had the National, the NCRA, the National Court Reporters Association, and they provide certification. And the NCRA provides certification for different types of skills. So CART, all it takes is, well, quote unquote, all it takes is logging to a URL, like a Streamcast or OneCap app URL, and running your CART. You have to be trained and certified as a stenographer. You do the CART. Captioning, you have to have training working with encoders. You have to understand the skills, the technology, and you have to have the tools to hook into encoding systems and other to take the caption and stream it just like to a TV. So there are two different types of training, two different types of tools to use. Most CART writers and captioners know how to do both. I hope that answers the question. So technically speaking, you as a consumer shouldn't worry about it. You might get a captioning or a CART. Just tell the vendor, we need X, Y, Z. We're doing this platform at this time. What can you give us? And have them help you take care of it. That's their skill set. So going back to the presentation, talking about ASL interpreting. ASL interpreting is a WCAG level AAA criteria. So it's not required for accessibility where captioning is. But folks can definitely request it as an accommodation. So when we announcing this, if someone had written in and said, I would like ASL interpreting, then it would be appropriate for us to provide ASL as well. For it to work, however, within this meeting environment, you need to be able to pin the interpreted video. In other words, I think in Zoom, for example, right now, if we had everybody on video, Zoom would move the video to whoever made the sound. So if you touch the screen, tap on the table, or start talking, Zoom moves to you and keep moving around. So pinning means making sure that a certain video always stays on the interpreter. Not all systems allow you to do that. So in those situations, the interpreter will need to connect with the user by way of a separate link, a separate video link. So again, you have to look at your platform, confirm whether or not it can pin, and talk with the ASL interpreter about the best way to provide the service to the people who need it. Next slide. So what are you sharing? As I mentioned earlier, make sure your online meeting tool supports the features you need, such as sharing documents, a whiteboard, chat, polling, video, and so on. Also ask yourself, will only the presenter speak like today, in which case you use a broadcast tool like Skype for broadcast, WebEx events, or Teams Live? Or do you want everyone to have speaking privileges? Not only does each platform vary in what they can do, but even within platforms. For example, WebEx meetings and WebEx events handle captioning video completely differently. This presentation is not designed to compare platforms, but to be aware that they continue to evolve and change. So always check to see what's new. Something to be aware of. In some platforms, chat, and I believe somebody mentioned it earlier in the chat, chat causes problems for users of screen readers. So for example, in some platforms, when I'm talking and somebody's talking on the chat, that can be both the chat voicing and my voice would be going at the same time, which would be very difficult to manage. So if that is part of your audience, you have a significant blind audience, you may want to confirm how chat works, and if so, limit when and how people use the chat. So now I'm going to hand it off back to Josh and mute my microphone.
This is Josh. Thank you, Jay. And Lauren, you can go to the next slide, please. So you do not want to do these meetings on your own if possible. We know some meetings, may be so small that an individual has to take on multiple roles, but everything will go smoother if you incorporate your team and giving people roles that they can use during the meeting. First and foremost, you want to make sure you have a meeting leader, someone that's in charge of the facilitation and can really direct the conversation, which we will discuss more as we go along. Secondly, key important role is to have someone, especially if it's a larger meeting, that is monitoring the chat, that is able to address questions that people have, especially about logistics or technology issues, or easily answered questions that may not be good to discuss to the whole group. You want to have somebody monitoring on that chat, and ideally it's someone different than the meeting leader or the presenters, as it can be hard to juggle all of those successfully. Next up is multiple presenters. You want to consider, do you have multiple presenters as we do today? And that can lead to some issues that we'll discuss around taking turns, but it's really important that the multiple presenters have an idea of the agenda and the flow and are clear about who is speaking when, so that the audience can follow along properly. And we'll go into a little more details about the specifics there, but as we're talking about roles, it's just an important thing to consider. Lastly, a note taker. Always good to have someone recording, especially if you're in a meeting, you have action items or things to follow up on. You want to be sure and have a note taker there. And again, hard to manage the logistics of all of these in a big meeting. And so dividing up the roles can be really important. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we're really talking about some of the rules you may want to have in place. Obviously, different meetings are going to require different rules. We're really doing a high level, some bits and pieces you can take and apply to whatever virtual meetings you're having. But one important one is having one speaker speak at a time. I think everyone has probably had the experience of being on a conference call or a virtual meeting and people jumping in and stepping on toes or talking over each other, and they can't hear each other sometimes. So you really want to focus on having one person speak at a time. And while that's happening, make sure that all other mics are muted. Also, as we've been trying to model here, it's really important to say your name every time before speaking. When you come on as a new speaker, you want to say your name before you go. And there are multiple reasons for that. Some people, in the framework we're using that Jay set up with differing abilities, some people may have a really hard time distinguishing people's voices. It's also really important if you're using CART for the transcripts. It's going to make it way easier for your notes to go back and look and see who said what. And it also makes it easier for the CART provider to understand who's speaking, as they may have been given a preview of things. So be sure when you jump in to say your name every time before you're speaking. Also being mindful that some people may not be getting visual cues. So if you have a platform that puts up your video to the person that's speaking, that may not be sufficient for folks. So best practice, you want to try it. I fail, but if you have a good team, you know, they keep you honest, and it's a great thing to model, and it's a really constant and repeated notion around inclusion as a reminder of what we're trying to do. So a really good thing to start with. You want to describe what you're doing or showing on the screen. So, you know, if you have slides, you're going over a graph or a table or a picture, be aware that not everyone may be able to see those clearly or fully, and people may be following along via audio. And so you want to be sure and describe if you have images or different things you're using during the presentation. You want to give those a full description as you can. We will go into some of these specifics later, but just thinking about some of the meeting rules you may want to come up with, and again, we will discuss some ideas. How do you cue speakers? How do you know who talks when? And how will the meeting leader decide on that? And lastly, which is really something that should happen before the meeting, if you are sharing any documents, information, you want to be sure and send that in advance as a best practice, and make sure that those documents are accessible so that people that you know, may need to pull them up off of the presentation and review them or follow along will be able to do so. Next slide. And I will go on mute and turn it back over to Jay.
Hello, everybody. It's Jay Wyant again. In your invitation or registration notice, be sure to state what accommodation you are providing, such as CART or caption. We did that when in our announcement, for example, we said we would have CART if you provided that link. Then provide contact information for any accommodation request. There's nothing more frustrating than announcing something and not having an easy way to contact people to say, are you providing this, or may I have this? It's done. When providing a link to the program, include the captioning link if it's separate. Do not wait until the meeting to share the link. But what if there isn't time? If it's the last minute meeting or request? Then we're back to the nightmare scenario that I mentioned at the beginning, walking in code. That's when it's key to have a 10-digit number for relay access. So it's a good idea to make sure that you have that set up for your platform. Some platforms don't have the 10-digit number option built in. So in that case, you may need to get a phone bridge or a separate phone number bridge connected to the call. Also, someone was asking about using ASL card for relays. You can do that, but remember that's not the same as providing specific accommodations, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So when it's key to have a 10-digit number, automated was great, but automated captions are a second, much less desirable option. It's only there if you have no other options available, or with a small group and the person requires the caption are consented to that. And please be sure to monitor the chat. For some, this may be the only way to contribute. Imagine how frustrating it may be to chime in via the chat and have the conversation to keep on going with no one acknowledging your question or comment. Next slide, please. When you're starting a meeting, always check off by reviewing the ground rules. For a regular meeting, this may become less necessary. For example, ideally, as Josh said, everyone makes it a habit to say their name each time they speak, but folks can't forget. Then a gentle reminder may be necessary. You should have included the call-in number and caption information invitation, but it's a good practice to also include it on the opening slide or in the chat. at least have the chat monitor ready with information when requested. It's happened several times already this meeting. People are asking, where are the captions? And Lauren's been posting the caption links right there. By the same token, the chat monitor should also be prepared to repost any links or attachments that were sent in the invitation. If you're recording, announce it and note any post meeting information or links. This is save you from answering just questions during the meeting. If people are saying, for example, will we see the slides later, whatever. If you could post that in advance, that will help limit the amount of comments or questions coming into the chat. And the chat monitor can also repost that if it does come up for someone who arrived late. Now I'm going to hand it back off to Josh.
Thank you, Jay. This is Josh, and we want to talk a little bit about facilitating the meeting. So we talked about roles and rules and different things you need, and we want to talk about when you're in the meeting, some of the best practices that can make sure that it's inclusive and people are able to give their attention to things. One, you want to mute your email and all other notifications. So if you're in a meeting and you're presenting, be sure that you close out other apps so that you don't have distracting noises or things popping up, both for you as whether you're a speaker or attendee. This can really help your focus and those of others who may be able to see or share your screen. So close all unrelated apps and content. Second, when you're in the meeting, you want to watch for alerts from the chat monitor. As Lauren did here one time, jumping in and sharing a question that was pertinent in the middle is helpful. And so while Jay, while Jay and I are trying our best to monitor the chat, there's a lot going on while we're presenting. And so the chat monitor is able to either send us chats or jump in with their voice and help us move things along and better able to facilitate the meeting. Next, if you have a queue of people, and we will go into details about ways to do that, you might want to give people a heads up that the order of speaking so that people know who's next, so that people don't have to worry about being called on or raising their hand. Just going to help with the flow of things a little better. And as I mentioned before, when facilitating, it's really important to describe visuals. So those are some facilitation notes, and you can go to the next slide. And whoops, sorry, had a screen issue there. I'm going to turn it over to Jay for this slide and go on mute. Jay, is your mic on?
I am. Sorry, this is Jay speaking. I had to unmute my microphone. So when you're managing the contributors, what you need to do is allow time for participants to add notes in the chat what they ask to speak. So for example, we have multiple people talking during the meeting as opposed to a presentation like today. Then what you want to do is make sure that some people may not be like I did just this moment. It took me a moment to unmute my mic. Allow me time to do that. Don't try to say, oh, while you're not talking, I'll talk. People need to take time to allow other people to talk. Secondly, multiple ways to provide feedback. So for example, again, when I'm attending a meeting as a deaf person, sometimes I just want to communicate easy to chat. I don't necessarily know the best time to jump in or the best time to hear when one person's not talking and the next person starts. So I'm going to type the chat, and everybody else can read it and respond either verbally or in chat as well. So you have multiple ways to collect that feedback. Third, avoid letting any one person to dominate the audio. So we're going to talk about that. For like, for folks on the phone, I'm sorry. So people may remember that those folks may take longer to unmute or not mute. So this is not a bad way to say, excuse me, I'm looking at my notes. So we'll talk about the dominated audio. We'll give you strategies in a minute. And then the key is to recognize there are many reasons people may not be quick to jump in. Again, they can't move quickly enough, or they have mobility issues, or there are many other things. So make sure to allow people time to do what they need to do. Next slide, please. Okay, so with live meetings, it's too easy for people to talk over each other. One good strategy is to use the chat to request to speak using a prearranged code such as Q+. So again, everybody's talking, and people want to have the next chance to talk. They type in Q+, you know immediately that's the next person. But if someone is on the phone, they may not have the ability to do that. So they may just need to interject during a pause to say, "This is Jay, please put me on Q." So either way, whoever facilitated will monitor between the Q pluses and those who verbally ask to Q and make sure everybody has the equal time. Facilitators need to remember that some folks, again, as I mentioned earlier, may take longer to unmute, or they may be talking without realizing that they are muted. That's not a bad time to say or post in the chat that the keyboard shortcut for unmuting the mic, in this case, is Alt-A for Zoom. If you're managing the meeting, by the way, Alt-A mutes everyone but the host. So again, be reminding people, oh, the mic is muted, you may want to unmute. If a lot of people are requesting to speak, then announce the next 3 will show in order. So you can see there are 4 Q pluses and 3 people have announced that they want to talk. Name, okay, we want Josh, and then Lauren, and then Sam, in order, and then we'll go from there. So they all know and they can plan ahead for their turn to speak. Next slide, please. If this is a meeting, as opposed to a formal webinar or presentation like this, be sure to pause at key points and ask if anyone else has something to add. It's okay to have as long as 15 or 30 seconds a day their time, as long as people know that you allow people a chance to think about what they want to say or to ask to say something. Sometimes folks can be shy. Don't take silence as agreement. I'm checking to make sure the captions are running. Somebody was commenting the captions were not showing up. Yes, they're running. Okay, we're good. By the way, if somebody is monitoring the caption and the captions stop, you need to stop the meeting. You're not allowing people to participate if they're relying on the captions and the captions have stopped or turned off or whatever reason. So that's why I needed to check to make sure the captions were still running. So back to the presentation. So I was saying some folks can be shy. Some options are, number 1, you can ask folks to comment in the chat, a +1 or a -1. So +1 is they agree with what you're saying. Good, a thumbs up. -1 means, no, I don't agree. I think we should do something else. So people can contribute in that way without having to say something or offer an opinion. Or you have a key decision. If it's an important decision that we have to have buying in on, go through the whole roster of attendees. Use some order, like alphabetical by first name, so folks can prepare. Most participant lists enable you to sort by first name or by last name, and people know their order. So by going through by name, if they got distracted or had audio issues, you have a chance to confirm that they had to respond. And you get to their name, and they have audio issues, you can say, we'll come back to that person. You continue to list and then come back to the person who had issues. That way, you ensure everyone has a chance to speak or contribute. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you have a group member who's picking up a lot of the speaking time, it can be helpful to perfectly see if others have thought to share. This can be through saying, I see David on the queue, but I would like to be sure that others have had a chance to weigh in. I'm going to pause for a moment to see if others are ready to contribute. Or you can do this. David's been doing a great job asking questions, helping us think this through. I want to be sure that others have the same opportunity I'm going to go through each person's name and just do a quick check-in before getting back to David. So in that way, you make sure that everybody who has a chance to speak can. Now I'm going to check and see if Josh can come back on. Josh, are you able to come back on now and finish up, or do you want me to continue?
This is Josh. I think I can run us through the resources and we'll take us to question and answer. So folks, we have a few more minutes. We've been getting some questions and answering them, but we will take some time to do that just momentarily. So this slide has some additional resources you may want to share. Minnesota and folks that Jay works with have some great tips, additional tips, and find a lot of this outlined on the top link there of how to have accessible remote meetings, and would encourage you to check that out. The PEAT team has added a few resources you may find relevant. One of them is about virtual presentations and webinars such as this, and 7 steps you want to make sure that you have to ensure a successful inclusive presentation. We also have just released a whole slew of resources related to telework and accessibility. These are resources that we put out about a week ago that we are continuing to build. And again, these are all free and open to the public. So I would strongly encourage people to check those out and share them. And if there are resource needs that you have that you don't see addressed there, please let us know. We are trying to be responsive and make sure that in this new reality, which more and more people are working remotely, which is going to be the future regardless, that is accessible and inclusive. So all resources we would like to share. Lastly, Jay put in a bullet about texting, MNIT space A11Y, which is a shorthand for Minnesota IT Accessibility. And you can text that to the number 468311. And this will subscribe you to Minnesota's monthly accessibility newsletter, which I can tell you has a lot of great resources in there to check out. So with those resources shared, we can go to the next slide and open things up to question and answer. We will do our best to get to ones that seem like they would be beneficial to everybody and give us the best shot at answering what we can. So bear with us while we look at what we have. I know the team has been diligent in answering questions as they go, but we'll do a little live question and answer that we have time for now. Jay, if you want to come on too, and we can take a look at the question and answer box and maybe take turns answering any one of these. I see there's a question from Danielle about, is this newsletter available for email, people outside the US? I don't know the answer to that if you do it by text, but I am certain, and Jay, you can confirm or deny, that you would be able to sign up for an email newsletter that could go anywhere. I'm not sure about the tech logistics. Jay, do you want to respond to that?
This is Jay speaking. Yes, I can respond to that. But can you go back to the previous slide for a moment? And I will make sure people got the information. So again, it's text MNIT space A11Y to the number 468311. Now, if you are outside the United States, you can still get the newsletter. The texting may not work as well. I'm not sure about that. You can always get the newsletter. If you go to the link, the first link on the slide, which is how to have, basically the blog post about this. You go to that blog post, you go to the bottom of the blog post, there'll be a chance for you to subscribe to the newsletter that way as well. So either way will work. And if you subscribe in that way, anyone in the world should be able to subscribe. And I have, I'm looking at a couple of questions. So someone was talking about the 10-digit number. And yeah, by 10-digit number in the United States, that's what we mean by a phone number. Now, other countries have different digits and different ways to do it. Like the United States, we have the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which says that all people have the same right to have access to the telephone network. So if you're deaf, for you to have access to the telephone network, that means you may be called to the relay service, or you have a speech issue where you can hear but you cannot speak. Same thing, you can have someone speaking for you, and those are free. So in the United States, you can only do that through your phone number. So if you are having an audio call, conference call, for example, or if you have your webinar like this, but the person can only connect through with the relay service, then they can use that as a way to get their service. Just for example, someone who is deaf and uses American Sign Language, they want to call it that way. But I want to remind you that's a backup. So we have a captioner doing the captioning here. And if somebody has a question, American Sign Language, we will provide an American Sign Language interpreter. So the 10-digit number is your backup in case you are unable. For example, you had a meeting set up at the very last minute. 5 of you need to talk, and you have no time to request a captioner. Then the relay service is the backup for that way. Other countries have different approaches. Norway, for example, provides a relay service regardless of whether it's a phone number or a computer connection. So you don't need to worry about a 10-digit number there. Okay, I'm going to back off for a minute. Anybody else have any questions?
This is Josh. I see a couple of questions in the chat that I can answer. There was one, I have a question about a question, but in the chat from Jim Kane, it says, how is this currently being used in working VR with clients? I want to make sure which VR we're talking about, Jim. Is this virtual reality or vocational rehab? So if you want to chat that in there, I might be better able to answer that. Vocational rehab. So, I know of projects that are coming out of Department of Labor that are working around the WIOA rules and sharing accessibility resources to voc rehab. And so I think, I could direct you to those. I'll share my email here momentarily, but I'll pause here and turn it over to Jay, who may have a better understanding of this on the state level.
This is Jay speaking. I don't have an answer regarding vocational rehab. Although every state does have a vocational rehab resource, I'm not even sure. So Jim wanted to know how it can currently be used in working vocational rehab with clients. I'm not sure what you mean by this. You mean in conference calling and things like that? They are, I believe, provide meaningful remote rehab. Yes, this will be a way to provide VR remotely. Absolutely.
This is Josh.
Go ahead, Josh.
This is Josh. I was just going to add that on the PEATworks.org website, we do have a policy section called Policy Matters, where we address specific policy issues, and we do have a guide all for vocational rehab directed to them, American Job Centers, that focuses on digital accessibility as mandated under WIOA. And so if people were looking for resources to share with folks, that would be one place to look. I also shared my email in the chat. If there were follow-up conversations, I would be happy to redirect people to my colleagues at ODEP and get those answered for people that know a lot more about what's going on in voc rehab.
This is Jay speaking, and I want to interject that one of the reasons why we focus today on strategy rather than which platform is specifically for things like that. Because when you're doing services to a client, like a VR client or someone similar to that, you need to have strategy to make sure that whatever you do works for that person. So that's one of the reasons why hopefully this presentation will be helpful for you to make sure that you can have a conversation with the client, make sure you have what they need to provide that service. I want to jump to another question. People have been asking about pinning videos for the ASL interpreter, for example. And someone asked if you could pin 2 videos. And again, one of the challenges with all of these technologies is they're always changing, they're always evolving. So what I say about one platform today may be different next month. So I not to say which one you can or cannot pin 1 or 2. You need to test that. You need to spend some time in advance confirming how many can be pinned and how you manage that. Secondly, somebody asked who does the pinning. And in general, it's usually the person who is the host or the administrator of the presentation. So in this case, Lauren and Sam and Rachel are managing the presentation. Josh and I are doing the presentation. So they are the ones who are deciding what shows up, what does not show up, muting all the mics and things like that. Reminding you again that Josh said that you share roles. So usually the consumer or the attendee does not have the right to pin. Usually it's controlled by the person providing the presentation.
This is Josh. I want to just underscore what Jay said about platforms and not necessarily the place to answer which platforms are best or can do what. For my sake, maybe Jay's too, but we're not allowed to endorse different platforms. I will say on the PEAT Works website, under the new telework and accessibility resources, we do have a little blog about the various platforms that allow you to do a little more research around what its compatibility are and what the accessibility features are. So I would encourage and point people to that, but unable to go into specifics on this call. Oh, and I was going to add, this is still Josh, some questions and comments about Microsoft Teams. As part of this great series that IAAP is putting out, we'll have Megan Lawrence from Microsoft doing a couple of series, and one of them is going to be strictly focused on Microsoft Teams and being as inclusive and accessible as possible. So I'm not sure if those dates are up and out yet, but they will be soon. It will take place in May, and I would encourage people to check those out, especially if your team is using Teams.
This is Jay speaking, and Josh is correct that as a employee of the state of Minnesota, we do not endorse or support any particular vendor. I will note that most of the vendors that we talked about today do have strong accessibility teams. So you should, if you have any questions or concerns about a platform support for accessibility, you should reach out to that vendor. If you are working for an organization, like for example, I work in the state of Minnesota. If you have work for a corporation or organization, there is a Microsoft, for example, have what's called Enterprise Disability Answer Desk, or EDAD. And they are very responsive when you want to say, I've got a question, I've got a problem, let me know what's going on. If you Zoom, again, they are responsive as well when you send a problem or question to them. Same with all the other vendors. So please, if you find issues or concerns, reach out to the vendor. The more they hear from you about a particular issue, the more likely they are going to respond and try to address that issue. And this is Jay speaking. One more thing, the people who've been helping us, we managed to chat. If there's any other questions, we have a few minutes left that we can try to answer any burning questions that have been identified for us.
Hi, Jay, this is Lauren. We're getting a few questions from people about how they would go about having an ASL interpreter show up in a separate window during a presentation like in Zoom or Teams. Would you be able to view the ASL interpreter while also viewing the slides?
Sure. This is Jay speaking. So basically, you will have to have the ASL interpreter as well as the consumer be a participant in the program. So the ASL interpreter can log in like an attendee, and therefore they will have the ability to listen or see what's going on the screen, as well as and the attendee can also see what's going on the screen if they can. Then the interpreter by a separate channel will have a separate video connection to the attendee. So the interpreter basically attending and then interpreting to the other attendee. And so a technical term of this would be video remote interpreting, VRI, because the interpreter in most interpreting services have a VRI offering. So you can simply ask them to provide VRI, and they can set up the video. They can set up the way for the attendee to attend that video remote interpreting session and log into and attend the presentation. This is Jay. Hopefully that answers that question.
This is Josh. Thank you, Jay. Putting some resources in the chat for folks to see. We are winding down on time, so I think we'll have to end here unless Lauren or Jay, you see any last burning questions that you would like to have. Otherwise, I don't know if there are any announcements for end of this, but as I mentioned, there is the beginning of a series related to virtual telework, accessibility and inclusive features in this interesting time that we're all living in. And so I really want to thank people for joining us today on this, kickoff to give you some small tips and best practices on virtual meetings for you and your teams and colleagues, but encourage people to track and watch the upcoming webinars that cover a range of topics, documents, Microsoft Teams, talking about accessibility as it relates to a home office regarding ergonomics and physical space. And we want people to utilize these free resources as much as possible and really thank IAAP for opening them up.
Josh, this is Sam. Can I ask or offer a way that people can contribute? We are posting a survey about how COVID-19 and the coronavirus are impacting digital accessibility. I'll post the link in chat if people are interested in contributing your experience.
This is Josh. That's great. We are hoping to continue to grow our resources around this, and we'll track the results of that to see what some of the challenges and solutions may be, so that we can echo any findings you have. Any other last announcements from IAAP or Jay?
This is Jay speaking. Thank you all, and thank you to IAAP and PEAT for helping present this webinar. And it was great to talk with all of you, and I hope you all got a lot out of it. Again, everything will be posted on afterwards, and you can reach out to any of us. So again, great to be part of this. Thank you.
This is Josh. Thank you, Jay. So one little thing, I don't mind staying on a little longer to answer some of these questions and answers in the chats and Q&A. I won't be on audio, but to the extent we can provide answers via type or sending links, we're happy to do that. So if people want to see if your question gets answered, you can stay on a little longer. Thank you, IAAP and Jay.
Right, this is Rachel from IAAP. Again, thank you to Jay and Josh for today's webinar. And we will make the recording available as well as the transcript and a copy of today's presentation. So be assured that will get out to you. And we hope to see you next week for the second webinar in this series, which I believe is next Tuesday. So you'll get information and access instructions will be going out shortly.